Well, it was read, but now we're good anyway. Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled Monroe Planning Commission meeting. It is Monday, December 8th, 2025, 7:01 p.m. Before we begin tonight's agenda, I'd like to make an announcement regarding the scheduled public hearing for the Davis Properties pre-annexation zoning proposal. Due to the volume of public comments received and to ensure that all interested parties have a full and fair opportunity to participate, the city is requesting to postpone the public hearing originally scheduled for this evening. In addition, the additional time will allow staff to prepare further findings and analysis in response to the concerns raised in public comments. This item, pending vote, is being removed from tonight's agenda and we will not be discussing it tonight. Pending the commission vote, the public hearing will be rescheduled for Monday, January 12th, 2026, Planning Commission meeting. Please note that the public comments portion of tonight's meeting is not the appropriate time to provide comments on this matter. Anyone wishing to provide oral testimony regarding the Davis Properties proposal should attend the rescheduled public hearing on January 12th, 2026, where all comments will be taken as part of the official record. Staff will compile all public comments received and provide them to the commission at or prior to the January 12th public hearing. And
I move that we postpone the public hearing and reschedule it for January 12th, 2026.
Thank you for the motion. Brandy, is there a second? Second. Thank you, Carla. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And then a second requested amendment to tonight's agenda will be to insert a presentation and announcement following public comments to thank Brandy and Bob for their service. Is there a motion?
I motion that we do that.
Thank you, Kelsey. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Carla, for the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And with that, we'll do an official roll call. Sorry, I did that a tiny bit backwards. But Anna, can you do the roll call, please?
I would love to. Commissioners present in establishing the quorum. Commissioners Blair, Dawkins, Lockhart, and Lowe. Excused are Commissioners Walsh and Falk.
Thank you. And moving on to agenda item 3.0, public comments. Do we have anyone signed up for public comments this evening?
We don't.
Okay. Then moving on to agenda item 4.0, or nope, sorry. 5.1 is discussion on the Middle Housing Code amendments, and that is a presentation from Anita.
Can we go back to presentation?
Oh, sorry, the presentation, that's right.
All right, so this evening will be Brandy's last Planning Commission meeting. She successfully ran an election campaign to become a city council member. So she will be leaving us for the city council at the beginning of 2026. Brandy joined the Planning Commission before I started, just after Lance started with the city of Monroe in January of 2022. And some of the major accomplishments the commission completed while Brandy was on the commission included our Monroe 2044 comprehensive plan, which we do once every 10 years. It's a really big project. We also got through many zoning code changes relating to housing, accessory dwelling units, and also the citywide rezone. All of that is a lot of commitment, a lot of reading, and attending quite a few meetings. So with that, I just would really like to acknowledge Brandy and thank you for all of your time. We have a plaque if you'd be willing to come down.
Sure, I come here. Do you have a
All right, we will now proceed with the remainder of tonight's agenda. And yes, Brandy would like to say something.
That's a long walk now from the dais, so sorry for the delay of the meeting, but I love planning. I am going to miss being a part of this group. I'm glad that I'm still going to see all the hard work that you guys do through the city council and the staff for planning. You guys put in so much work. You're very smart and very amazing, so thank you. And thanks to my family for coming.
And thank you, Brandy. It's been a pleasure to serve with you on the commission. We've been serving for a while now, and I'm excited to see what you do as a council member.
So Melanie, if you just wanted to do like a 5-minute recess, we do have cake.
Okay, awesome. I didn't know we have cake. Now I know we have cake. So we will take a 5-minute recess for cake.
Are you saying goodbye? The sink in here is a great idea. Right? Okay, bye.
All right, we will return to tonight's agenda. We are moving on to agenda item 5.1, and that's Middle Housing Code Amendments, which will be presented by Anita.
Thank you. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm bringing back the Middle Housing Code Amendments. Just to give you a brief background, I was here at the November 10th, 2025 meeting, just to give you an introduction and kind of give you a schedule and give you the new approach of as where we're going with these code amendments. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go through attachments 3 through 7, and those are basically the code sections that are proposed to be revised. And as I go through those, feel free to stop me at any time for discussion. As we get further in, there is a certain code section that I would like some feedback on, and I will ask you that as well. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So if you want to just refer to the agenda packet, and then we will go to attachment 3 first. So with this code section, all we're doing is we're adding a definition to the C definitions of the code because we currently do not have a definition for cottage housing. So kind of have to scroll down a little bit, but if you kind of scroll down to a couple pages there, so under cottage housing, we're adding that new definition. And currently it reads small scale detached residential units on a single lot with a common open space. So I kind of was going through different cities' codes, and it's a pretty general definition. So if there's something you would like me to add, or if you have an idea of a different definition, we can always discuss that. But for now, this is kind of a description of what cottage housing is. So then we can go to, we can go to attachment 4. Let me just go back there. Oops. Let me scroll down a little bit because my computer's kind of. So the next attachment 4 is another definition section, and this is adding a middle housing definition because we do not currently have one. So it reads, buildings that are compatible in scale, form, and character with the single-family houses and contain 2 or more attached, stacked, or clustered homes, including duplexes, triplexes, 4plexes, 5plexes, 6plexes, townhomes, stack flats, courtyards, apartments, and cottage housing. After reading through this, I may revise it. This is just a general definition that came from Commerce, because Commerce does have a model ordinance for middle housing. So I just pulled that from them. Currently I'm not proposing 5plexes, 6plexes in single-family zones, so I may take a look at that, but that may be fine as well because those would be permitted in our multifamily zones, so that might be okay, but we can also talk about that a little bit. So as we go to the next attachment, this is our land use matrix 22.16.030, and this is where we have our permitted uses for the single-family zones. So currently we have 2 single-family zones, that's R7 and R15, and under dwelling units attached, we are proposing to allow duplexes in both R7 and R15, 4plexes in both zones, townhomes in both zones, and triplex. We are also proposing to allow cottage housing in both zones. So in the land use matrix, we have dwelling units detached crossed out or deleted just because we decided to create oh, I'm sorry. I think I see detached. I think yeah, that's not correct. Sorry. Yeah, that shouldn't be crossed out because we still are going to allow detached dwelling units, so that's a mistake. I will fix that. And then currently, duplexes are not allowed in R15, so we are proposing to allow duplexes in R15. So yeah, the duplex one should be the one that's deleted because we're gonna categorize those under detached dwelling units. So that was the only mistake, but I'll change that the next round I bring this back to Planning Commission. So we can talk about that a little bit if there's some opposition to having duplexes allowed in R15. We can always talk about that too if you have any comments on that. So we'll go down to the next attachment, and this is the one that I would like to get some input. This is a new section. This is a section for cottage housing. So under this section, this gives density for cottage housing. This gives development standards such as setbacks, average unit size, cluster size, building height, parking, and also we have some design standards that are under specifically for cottage housing. There's also some language about maintenance of common spaces. We want to make sure that, so there is a requirement for a common open space for cottage housing. So we just want to make sure that those are either dedicated to a HOA or a covenant or some other type of method. So currently, the section that I would like your input on is we do have a maximum size, and the maximum size is 1,400 square feet per dwelling unit. So just researching some other city codes, there's a variation. Some cities are 1,200, and I saw that it went all the way up to 1,500. So we have some flexibility on what we want that maximum square footage to be. And then also, there's a maximum building height of 25 feet or 2 stories. So the intent of these homes is to create smaller units on one lot, hopefully to create some more attainability, some more affordability for these types of homes. Under parking, we're just gonna say that, because I know there's a desire not to reduce parking for single-family homes, so it will be the current requirement of 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. So the difference with cottage clusters is that the garage is not a requirement. You can have a garage, but you're allowed to have a shared parking area. So that's something that's a little different with cottage clusters. Any comments on that section of the cottage housing code at this point?
Yeah, I have a quick question. What made you all land on the 1,400 specifically?
Excuse me. That actually, initially when I brought Middle Housing Code to Planning Commission last year, that was the square footage that our consultants gave us, and it's based on what they did in the Portland area. So it just came from another code, basically. Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious, you asked that question, do you think that the 1,400 is a good amount, or?
I'm okay with the 1,400. I'm just, in my head, I'm not great at the difference between square footage. I'm just thinking of my 1,700 square foot home fitting 5 of us. I mean, we fit as my kids grow. So I'm just thinking of the square footage, and if the idea is smaller, I don't know how small I'd consider that, but at the same time, I want there to be ample room so you can actually have a family in the cottage. That's how I would envision it anyway. So that's why I was just curious of why we landed. I have no issue with the 1,400 number.
Okay.
Yeah, I like at least 1,400 for
14.
at least some option, because
Okay.
the idea also with cottage housing could be that you have a young family, older people, single people, so a range between, you know, even 600 to 1,500 or something is, would make sense.
Okay.
I like that you're remembering about that parking thing, because Monroe is not like Portland in the way that we're still a family community and a car community. So we have to make sure we're thinking of both of those things in our building. The question I have for you is about the middle housing design standards, which I like. I think all that is really cool. It'd be great for, I can kind of envision what these would look like and stuff. Is this, we don't have these same exact standards for other buildings right now, right? Like other apartments or for single-family housing and stuff. I know that they want us to be careful to not make, or to make cottage housing or any kind of middle housing easier, no barrier, low barrier. So I guess I'm just asking if, is this the same or more strict than what we already have in the code?
That's a great point. I believe it's not more strict than our current design standards. So our intent for these design standards is to take the place of our current infill standards. So our consultant did look at those and kind of transfer them over. So essentially those would be the same. I think the next step would be to compare these to the single-family design standards that we have in our code chapter now. So I'll make sure that, that's a great point. I'll make sure that they're not more strict than what's already exists.
Because one option would be to make the single-family home ones incorporate these as well, just so that they're the same, so that
Okay.
there's not an incentive to not do this. But if, if everybody agrees that these are all pretty standard and it gives options, like one thing says pick 3 of the following things, and that kind of leaves it open for people. Thank you for hearing that point.
Okay, yes, that's a great point. Thank you. And then also, just to go back to the cottage housing, so I do have the density at basically 2 times what is allowed. So for example, in R7, it would be 14 units per acre, and then in R15, it would be 30 units per acre. So I just want to make sure that everyone is okay with that. It's in line with the townhomes, so the townhomes also have that same density.
Brandy.
Okay, that is a good, I meant to ask you about that.
Okay.
So since it says that in the design standards, doesn't it also need to say that in either the matrix of what's allowed, or like in R7 or R15 in the code, it would say like a parentheses or a bullet or something that says if you use cottage houses, you can get 14 instead of 7?
Yeah, I can look at doing that. I think I was looking at it more of putting all the regulations for cottage housing in that section, which is it's design standards, but it's also development regulations. So maybe I can put a footnote about if you're wanting to do cottage housing, go to this section, just to make it more clear.
Yeah, because another thought that I was thinking of is either of those zones correct for cottage housing? Or how, if I was looking at this, like on the website it says, how do I tell what zoning I have for my property, and then you end up getting to the matrix, it tells you R7, R15. Nowhere in there was I thinking to myself, I was actually thinking, how would I get a bunch of small houses on a lot? Because R7, if I'm gonna only get 7 houses, I'm gonna make the biggest ones that I can.
Yeah.
So it needs to be really clear that our R7 and R15 you can get more units if you go smaller.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I will look at making that more clear, whether it's a footnote or a direction to that section. Thank you.
Carla?
I know before we had some discussion on the common areas and how that was going to work. Has any more been developed on that? Like how that would work for people that were living there being renters or homeowners? Who takes care of it? all that kind of stuff.
Right. So yes, for cottage housing specifically, there is that requirement for open space. There's not that requirement for the other types of middle housing at this point. It's just for cottage housing.
Right.
But yes, it's going to have to be, there's a note in there saying that you either need to have an HOA or a covenant or some type of easement recorded. So everybody's clear on what the responsibility is for the parking area, if it's parking area, shared parking area, open common or space area, or pedestrian pathways, any area that's shared within the homeowners. Yes, they will be clear on.
So would that be designated during the development process?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Kelsey?
For the last bit, the new development in R15 zoning district shall be required to provide 20% of the units as affordable housing. Have we defined what that means, or is that equation that we had before of like the median income, 42% of that? Or is there, how are we going to define what affordable housing is?
The last section, yeah. So, yes, this section F, supplemental requirements, this came out of our previous discussion on middle housing, because it sounded like there was the desire to have a requirement that you have to provide affordable housing unit. So it is defined in our affordable housing chapter.
Okay.
But yeah, if there's an income level that we want to focus on for that affordable housing unit, we can talk about that as well. And maybe I'll bring back some examples of what that looks like. But yeah, this is specifically came from our discussions before. So just want to make sure this is still what the Planning Commission wanted, was to have this requirement.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I liked seeing that in there.
Okay.
And then I had one more question. Actually, I'll leave it because I can't find it. Thanks.
Okay. And then so just to go back to the middle housing design standards, I'm going to ask our consultants to come up with some examples, some drawings like we have for the cottage cluster developments. I think it's easier sometimes to have a picture of what that looks like. So that's something that's forthcoming as well. So, and just go back to one other point. So initially when I brought this to Planning Commission, it was a separate chapter. And I think it works better this way because we already do allow a lot of middle housing options. So we already allow duplexes, we already allow townhomes, and we already allow ADUs. So I think it's just incorporating some more options, the design standards, and then having some density with that as an incentive for developers to actually do these developments. Then to make sure that we have quality and that they look like the surrounding neighborhoods. We don't want anything crazy. So I think that's why I stopped at just the fourplex for now in the single family zones. So I don't have anything more than that at this point. But yeah, this is what I am proposing for now. Is there anything else that I'm missing that you would like to see in this code as far as any other middle housing options or requirements?
Brandy?
I do like that we're trying to get the affordable housing in there, 20%, 10%. Again, there's always, how do you manage that? Who's checking that? How long does that last for? All those things. Where we all know that a smaller sized house is going to cost less. So if we could somehow find a way to change the requirement from being income based to being like a square footage based, because that way it would not change with whoever the new owners were or whatever. That price, that house is still going to maintain a lower price because of the square footage. That's, I'm guessing somebody else does it like that in their city or code, because everybody's gets tripped up with this part about who do you define as affordable for. So that's a thought.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and this is a work in progress, so I definitely will bring back some more information next time I come. Do some revisions, make sure I add all your comments in there and do a little more research, looking at some other codes on the affordability issue. But this is kind of, yeah, I feel like this is moving forward. And yeah, unless you have any comments at this point, this kind of ends my presentation.
If there are no more comments or questions on this, we can move on to agenda item 5.2, which is our critical areas regulations, which is going to be a status update from Kate.
Thank you. So kind of as I mentioned at the last meeting, the way I'd been working on this is I'm building a bicycle while I'm trying to ride it. And I've concluded that it is not efficient for you and it's not efficient for me. So this is really outlining how I'm going to come back to you with a full product, and that is on page 182 of your packet. The one item I do want to, that I'm striking is I had a concept of how to meet some deadlines, which I no longer worried about. And so I will not be doing interim regulations with the city council. So the goal is by the end of next week, the entire package is together. And again, just as a reminder, that is all of the amendments to our critical areas regulations. I also need to do basically a report that explains how I've done the gap analysis, determining what was missing in our current code. And then I also need to do the citation of the best available science of why and how I am making the changes to our code. Again, as a reminder, I have been using the Department of Commerce Critical Areas Checklist. I've been using documentation from the Department of Ecology relating to wetlands. I'm using the Department of Fish and Wildlife recommendations for priority habitat conservation areas, and that also covers streams, which I've mentioned several times. That really is the biggest piece that is changing with this update. We are adding a new section for the critical aquifer recharge areas. We've never had that in our code, but technically the city of Monroe has the soils that support aquifer recharge, so that's being added in. There is, again, a small change to the geologic hazards, and so my goal, again, end of next week, I'll have this packaged up. I will send it off to the Department of Commerce for the state's 60-day review. I am anticipating a lot of comments from state agencies as well as our tribal partners. So then I could come back to you in early January and we will start this process with a couple of workshops, walking you through the changes made, and then we'll start the formal review process. If successful, I'm hoping that these will be adopted by the end of March, but it might extend a little bit later. I have been notifying, keeping in touch with my Department of Commerce contact, because this was part of the 10-year GMA update, which was part of why we did the comprehensive plan in 2024. The state gives us an automatic year extension, so it's technically due at the end of this year. I'm letting them know we're getting there, and I do want to let you know we are not alone. There are quite a few agencies in a similar position. The final piece, just to continue reiterating, is I have been using not only the documents from the state agencies and checklists, but also using the code sections that are for similar communities that have already successfully adopted their code changes with citations. So I will have the goal for next time is the draft, the document, and then a kind of a matrix to show you where all this information is coming from. So with that, probably don't have any questions because this is really a status update, but I'm looking forward to January and really getting into the weeds with you all. That's it.
Quick question. With this, I know this review schedule is completely tentative based on a few things. Looking forward with the public hearing rescheduled, and I'm not sure what the timeline is for getting new commissioners on board. So I don't know if maybe aiming for that first workshop for the second January meeting, but I mean, if it's ready to go for January 12th, then by all means, we could have that on the agenda. It's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, you have a good point. We will have quorum because we'll have to fill Brandy's position and then Bob's position, but we will have quorum. You know what, I will discuss that with Lance and Deborah, our city administrator, just to kind of get their feel, because otherwise we're gonna have to re-educate. That's a good
Yeah,
point.
that was kind of the idea, is this is a new path that we're gonna be working on for a little way, so it might be handy if possible to ensure that we have new commissioners. Whereas with the public hearing that we have on the 12th, those who will be here, the quorum will kind of have the background information on that. And so it just might make sense. But if that like inhibits your timeline at all, then by all means, have us start on the 12th.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable, and that's a really good point. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that? Nope. Okay, let me get back to my starting page. And we will move on to new business. Agenda item 6.1 will be an introduction to the proposed code cleanup phase 2 for the Monroe Municipal Code Title 22, which is Unified Development Regulations. And Leanne is going to go over that with us.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hannah and I are working on getting the PowerPoint going. Just a moment here. Yep.
Just working through technical things. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, there it is. Great. Thank you, Hannah. Okay, thank you, commissioners, for your patience tonight. So, good evening. Tonight, I'm here for an introduction on the Unified Development Regulations, or UDR, Code Cleanup Phase 2. Next slide. So tonight, our goal is to run through the history of our current UDR, to talk about the items included in the Phase 2 cleanup project, and to look forward towards the next steps of the code amendment process. We're not going to go into any discussion tonight of the Phase 2 code cleanup items, just looking through the history and getting set up for our steps moving forward. Next slide. Okay, some of you may remember the history of the UDR from our Phase 1 cleanup project, but we're going to go through it again tonight as well. Beginning in October 2017, city staff began the project to completely rewrite, repeal, and replace the current development code at the time. The Land Use and Development Code was split across the Monroe Municipal Code Titles 17 through 21. Just to give you an idea of the scope of the project, our current UDR is about 558 pages long, and over the course of the project, the entire code was completely rewritten, reviewed, and then amended and rewritten again multiple times. Planning Commission at the time worked through the update process through the course of 45 meetings before it was ultimately taken to City Council and adopted in Title 22, where the UDR lives today, on May 1st, 2019. Shortly after the adoption of the new UDR in 2019, city staff started a spreadsheet so we could start tracking all of the issues that were popping up as we actually started to use the code. Kind of think of it as putting a new engine in a car. You need a little bit of time for it to run before you can find out how your installation was and what tweaks you're going to need to get it to up and running the way you want it. With the code rewrite of this size, it was always anticipated that this cleanup project was going to be inevitable, and we're now moving on to that Phase 2 cleanup. Additionally, due to the large scope of that UDR rewrite, the definitions in particular were largely unchanged as part of that update. We kept the old definitions when we adopted the new UDR, and knowing that we would move forward with cleanup later on, again, just due to the scope of the project. Starting in 2021, staff went through a first wave of definitions update, focusing mostly on those land use definitions and classifications, and those were updated by City Council and went into effect on December 14th of 2022. Fast forward a little bit and we come to the Phase 1 code cleanup, which started with a list of 122 items that needed to be addressed that came off of that spreadsheet that started back in 2019. 34 of the items on the list at that time ended up being things that had already been addressed or items that after more consideration were actually needed to be amended. And 68 of the remaining items were identified and corrected as part of that Phase 1 update. Phase 1 focused mostly on errors and inconsistencies that didn't require any policy change. The code cleanup items in Phase 1 started with Planning Commission discussion in September of 2024 and were ultimately adopted by City Council at the beginning of this year when they went into effect on January 28th, 2025. And finally, we come to the Phase 2 cleanup, which is what we're at today. We currently have 41 items left on the list to be addressed as part of this phase of the project. Some of the items are smaller in nature, similar to the Phase 1 items. They just popped up after we'd already started the public hearings for Phase 1, so they had to wait for Phase 2. But the majority of the items will require some discussion, which is why we're back here with the Planning Commission for that Phase 2. The list you see on the screen are some different categories for the Phase 2 items. So I'm going to run through the different categories and give you like one or two examples of each one. Again, as we start our discussions, we'll go ahead and hit each item individually. But for now, these are just some broad categories. So the biggest item that needs addressing is the consistency between the existing land use tables and the definitions. And those are the attachments that are on your packet tonight. The way our code is currently written, each of the zones have their own land use table in each chapter. So we combine those into a single table across the 2 pages that are in your packet. So all the land uses that are allowed across the city of Monroe are down the left side, and then all the zones are across the top. So you can easily compare all the uses that are allowed in the city and then where they're allowed across town. And then the list of definitions is taken straight out of MMC 2212, the definitions chapter. And I just kept in the land use definitions. You'll notice some of them are highlighted. If they're a highlighted definition, that means that defined term is also in the land use tables, which is great. If it's not a highlighted term, that means that it's a listed land use in the definitions, but then if you go to try to find it to see where it's allowed in town, it's not in any of the tables. So that's going to be a large part of this phase 2, is making sure that those tables and the definitions match and can be used together instead of being a little bit disjointed as they are now. The next bullet point we're going to work through is the use of the NAICS codes in the definition. The NAICS codes are the North American Industry Classification System. They were developed by the Federal Statistics Agency to help basically with business statistics and tracking. They started to get used in the definitions, but the project was not really finished. So right now, the way the NAICS codes works is you start in broad categories and then it drills down all the way into like specific businesses. So they could theoretically be helpful in a land use table, but they're not that way now. There's just a couple of them sporadically mixed into the definitions. Some of them reference incorrect codes, and some of them are not necessarily helpful to the definitions. So we'll be having a conversation if we want to keep those in here or cut our losses, pull all those codes out, tweak the definitions to make them usable without referencing those NAICS codes. We're also going to be looking at missing land uses that need to be addressed. So as businesses call us and we can't find a good fit for them in the table, they ended up on part of the code cleanup list. We also have some uses that have been added by different code amendments since the UDR was adopted. One example of that is in the downtown commercial zone, the addition of the banquet halls. So looking at that across citywide and see if there's any interest in adding that anywhere other than the downtown. The next category are some challenges in implementation. As people have started using this code to actually build real-life projects, we've had some feedback for one example of the lot size in our more dense zones. One of the local developers in particular has been vocal about the lot sizes being not very buildable with the density that we're trying to get in those small, in the more dense areas of town, and making sure that the bulk requirements allow us to actually build a product on those lots. We also have some process updates that we're hoping to work through as we've now taken some projects all the way from questions and pre-applications to projects being built out under these UDRs. We've had a couple of things that have popped up that we could just have more efficiency at. An example of that is our record drawing requirement. So when something like a new subdivision is being built, the developer puts in all that infrastructure, the streets, the stormwater, water system, sewer, and they build that all. And then at the end of the project, they're required to give the city an as-built. As changes in the field popped up, the original set of plans that were approved are no longer fully accurate to what's in the field. And we need to be able to get those as-built drawings from the developer. And it is a requirement at this point, but we don't have really any leverage at the end of the project in our process as it stands today to make sure we're getting those accurate drawings from the developer. So it's working okay right now, but there's definitely some room for improvement in our processes, and we're hoping to address that in this phase 2 cleanup. Also looking for some clarification for some different items in this phase 2. One example is just how do we determine setbacks on odd-shaped lots? We have a lot of definitions of, you know, what's a front yard setback? What's a side yard setback? What does that look like on a corner lot? How is that different on a flag lot? But one example that's popped up a few times recently is like a triangle-shaped lot. Just putting in that clarity so we as staff and the public can go into our code and find out how to look at those setbacks. We also are going to look at city properties that have public uses that are not fully addressed accurately right now. So the two examples are the sewer treatment plant and the senior center. The land use tables don't quite match those uses that are already existing and functional today. So just making sure we have those updated in the future. We had a similar problem with the food bank a few years back, and that has since been fixed through different code amendments, but want to get ahead of those other two properties. In the signage chapter, the item we're looking at is just going for some consistency between commercial and non-commercial temporary signage, just making sure we tighten up that verbiage a little bit so that the requirements for both are just streamlined and more similar. They're pretty close now, but their wording is just slightly different, which makes it tough for staff in the field and people coming in and asking us questions. How come my sign can do this and mine can't? So just making that a little more consistent. And then finally, we have a few items that will need to be updated to be consistent with state laws. Daycare centers is going to be one of those items. And then I also just wanted to take this opportunity to remind the commissioners that this Phase 2 cleanup project is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to be working our way through a specific list of housekeeping items that have already been addressed and identified as something that we need to help the UDR become a more user-friendly and clear document. We're not looking to revisit any different policy changes at this time or introduce any new changes to the list. We do still have your list of items that all of you have brought up in the past that you're hoping to address on the Planning Commission, and you'll be starting your conversation of your program of work here shortly for the next year, and that's a great time to revisit those as well. So next steps for this Phase 2 project, again, these are just goals, but kind of where I'm hoping to land here. We're going to be coming back for discussion with the Planning Commission on the actual code cleanup items, working through our 41 items in January and February. And then in early March, visiting EDAB and CHSAB as necessary. EDAB, I think, will definitely be interested in, especially because a lot of the land uses. CHSAB, I'm not too sure so far if any of our topics will affect their usual areas of interest, but if it does, we'll definitely go to that board as well and get their feedback. Then coming back to you all here in late March for our public hearing before moving on to City Council in May and June for their discussion, public hearing, and hopefully adoption. Next slide. Thank you everyone for your time tonight and for letting us get a jump start on this cleanup project. If you're looking for a way to kind of prepare for our first discussion, if for some reason you have some spare time during this busy season of the year, you're welcome to look through those land use tables and the definitions and just kind of familiarize yourself with where we're getting started so we can start that conversation. And if you have any general questions about the scope of the timeline or the project itself, I'm happy to answer any of those now. Thank you.
Brandy?
I'll take my last opportunity here to just have a few notes that I wanted to give to you. So I remember us doing the definitions right at the beginning of, I think you said it was 2022. And at that time, we kept struggling with have a lot of definitions. We have a lot of definitions, and we kept struggling with, like, how do we, like, make them simpler or simplified? So for instance, I'm looking at, like, tavern, tasting room, bakery, like, can't all of those somehow become like someplace, establishment that people eat or drink at or something? Like, and there's other ones like the Shake and Shingle Mill. It seems like that could be anything that is manufacturing, you know? So it seems like we still could. And so I know you said that there's some stuff that there was a list where there wasn't a definition, and you've been taking notes of that. So maybe if you're going to put in a new definition, that could be a trigger to say, hey, wait, could this fit in something else if we just tweaked that and made the other definition more general? And then that could spur you to get rid of maybe 2 or 3 other definitions. I know we had wanted to do that originally, but that was way too big of a scope, so we just settled on the definitions that we had in front of us. Another thing, you had mentioned that there was a list. I didn't see, is it in here that of the stuff that's missing, or is that just something you're keeping?
I have it for now. It wasn't quite cleaned up and ready for the commission yet, but it will be in the next discussion. It will definitely be attached.
Cool. That's just seems really, that's really smart to add the stuff that you're missing. Could we have more information on what that developer was mentioning about density targets and lot size?
Yes. I'll have to go after what I remember. I have some notes back. But one of the local developers for Canson was specifically, I believe it was in the R25 zone. He was talking about how the lot, I believe it's specifically the lot width was not workable. I'll have to reference, I can't remember if he said it was too narrow because he couldn't do, if he was trying to do standalone houses with the setbacks, it was making like a house that was too narrow, I believe was his criticism of that. That being said, this was all before we started allowing attached units in that zone. So I'll be circling back as we start to get into the individual items, and I'll probably even circle back with Rick Hansen himself and see if that's still a concern, since he's building some different types of product now. But yes, that'll be something we'll jump into.
Any other questions or comments? Nope. All right. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the work we're doing on this moving forward. And moving on to discussion by commissioners and staff. We will start with Carla.
I wasn't really ready for that. I'm going to think about this for a second. A lot going on, obviously, and we start 2026. There's going to be a lot, which is going to be good. I look forward to it, and I think it's going to be a lot of reading. Anyways, I just really want to say, we have the holidays going on right now. There is just so much going on in our current city and cities around us, and I hope people are really taking advantage of that and enjoying the holidays. And I hope you guys are enjoying it too. And I'll see you next year.
Thank you, Carla. I'll go ahead and go in order. Just be careful because of the flood warnings. So depending on where you're traveling or what you're doing, it's Washington. It could be really bad. It could be nothing. We don't know. But just be mindful of it. It's been super windy outside, so there's at least definitely some loose tree branches, and there's been already one or two tragedies in the general area with that, so be careful out and about. Brandy?
Okay, my last meeting, I want to say thank you again to staff and to my fellow commissioners. One thing it seems like right now the culture of the commission and the city and just people in general is looking at what we're doing and saying, can we do it any better? And that's what it looks like this phase cleanup stuff is all about. And that's what we're looking at with middle housing, like how can we get what we want out of these developments? Can we do anything better? So that's always a good place to for us to be at. And thank you everyone for all your work. If anybody's online or watching this, there's going to be a vacancy, 2 vacancies on Planning Commission. So if you're watching these on YouTube, you must have an interest in this. So please apply.
I'm sorry, I'm going to backtrack 1 second because Commissioner Bach's wife, her service is this Sunday at 1 o'clock at the Monroe High School PAC building. So 1 o'clock on this Sunday. Kelsey.
Just wanted to say thank you to Brandy. You've been such a vital part of our commission, and she's the one that told me about this position, so it's been really fun to be involved in the community in this way. So we're going to miss you, but congratulations on City Council, and excited to see what you're going to do. And thank you, staff, for everything. And that's all I got.
Kate?
Okay, I have a few items. Working with staff earlier today, we have concluded that we will be able to cancel the December 22nd meeting, so enjoy your holiday. The next one, you have already provided information, Len Bulk's Celebration of Life service is at the high school at 1 o'clock. I did see that there is an obituary in the Snohomish Tribune, so it's pretty nice. It talks about her history as a teacher and a principal. And then Brandy stole my thunder. I was gonna say, we have 2 positions, so please, if you have friends who are talking land use or are interested, we're gonna have to fill 2 positions, and our new mayor, that will probably be one of her first jobs, is trying to help us out. And then lastly, Mayor Thomas's last meeting is on December 18th, and I believe reception before that council meeting. So those are my notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Anita, do you have anything?
I don't have anything to add. I think it's the 16th, though, right? Oh, sorry. The council meeting to say goodbye to the mayor is the 16th.
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. I don't have anything to add. Just thank you for your service this year, Planning Commission. I appreciate your comments and working with you, and I look forward to the new year and happy holidays.
Thank you, Anita. Leanne, do you have anything?
I don't. Just happy holidays and happy new year, everyone.
Thank you. Lance, anything for us tonight?
I do. I wanted to thank all the planning commissioners for all the work that you've done this year, and to say thank you to Brandy. And I think you came on to planning commission about the time that I started working here, and I know that we went through a 2-year process with the comp plan where we were at a lot of public events, and you were a regular person at all of those events. And I remember a lot of those conversations about housing and other issues as we went through the comp plan, and really appreciated that input and look forward to working with you on city council. We'll be the same room.
Thank you, Lance. Hannah, do you have anything for us tonight?
Just that I've really enjoyed working with all of you this year. You guys did some really good work, and I hope you all feel accomplished and proud of yourselves. And Brandy, it's been so nice working with you again. I think that you've been a fantastic planning commissioner, and I know you're going to be great on city council. So way to go.
All right, thank you, commissioners and staff, and have a wonderful holiday season. With that, if there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting, and Happy New Year.